It started on a chilly Monday morning in the quiet town of Ashwood, where the sun peeked over the rolling hills and cast golden light over the brick buildings of Lincoln Elementary School, a small, aging public school where the scent of crayons lingered in the hallways and the walls were lined with decades of children's art taped over peeling paint. Walter Green, the school's longtime janitor, had already been at work since 5:30 a.m., unlocking classrooms, mopping the scuffed linoleum floors, and humming old jazz tunes that reminded him of his younger days in New Orleans before life took him down a road he never expected. Walter was a fixture in the school, older than most of the teachers, slower than the students, and quieter than the shadows, but somehow more present than anyone. With his worn flannel shirts, graying beard, and soft brown eyes that had seen pain and beauty in equal measure, he had a way of noticing the little things others missed: the tear-streaked face of a kindergartner in the back of the lunchroom, the shy smile of a fifth grader who'd just made a friend, the teacher who stayed late every night, holding herself together for the kids even as her own world quietly unraveled. But on this particular morning, as Walter passed by room 2B with a mop in hand, something tugged at him. He glanced through the narrow rectangular window and saw a new boy standing next to a desk, his arms stiff at his sides, his knuckles white, his back straight as a board. The rest of the class was already seated, chatting or fidgeting as Mrs. Callahan, a sweet-tempered woman with silver hair pulled into a bun, called for quiet. "Noah, honey," she said gently, walking over to him, "you can go ahead and take your seat." But the boy, small, maybe 6 or 7, with tangled brown curls and clothes that didn't quite fit, just shook his head slowly. I can't," he whispered, his voice so low Walter could barely hear it through the glass. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't even fear. It was something deeper, something locked tight behind his eyes, like a secret trying desperately to stay hidden. Walter stood frozen in the hallway, his old heart stirred by something he couldn't name. That look on the boy's face, that tension in his shoulders, it was too familiar, too much like the way his little brother used to flinch when their father raised his voice back in their childhood home in Alabama. He didn't say anything, didn't barge in or ask questions, just made a note in his mind to keep an eye on that kid. Throughout the day, he saw more. Noah remained standing for every activity. At story time, during lunch, even when the other kids sprawled on beanbags during quiet reading hour. He stood by his desk, shifting his weight from foot to foot, wincing when he tried to bend, his little fingers gripping the edge of the desk for support. The other kids started to notice. "Why won't you sit?" whispered a girl named Ellie. "You think you're too cool or something?" asked a boy with freckles. Mrs. Callahan, ever patient, stepped in to diffuse the whispers. "Noah is just getting used to his new environment," she explained kindly, but even she seemed puzzled, concern clouding her otherwise calm expression. That night, as Walter emptied the classroom trash cans, something drew him back to room 2B. He stood in the quiet room, dimly lit by the orange glow of the parking lot lights outside, and walked over to Noah's desk. He ran a hand over the plastic chair, then squatted down to inspect it. There, barely visible beneath the seat, was a faint, reddish-brown stain. It was dried, sticky. Blood. Walter froze. His stomach turned. This wasn't the accidental kind of blood you'd expect from a scraped knee or paper cut. This told a story. A silent, horrifying story that had played out on this chair while no one noticed. The next morning, he watched Noah even more closely. When the boy walked, he moved like each step hurt. He flinched if anyone got too close. He barely spoke. At recess, Walter saw him alone on the edge of the playground, sitting on the curb with only half of his weight on the concrete, his eyes darting from the other kids to the teachers on duty, never settling. That afternoon, Walter made his move. He found Noah in the hallway by the water fountain and approached slowly, kneeling down so their eyes met. "Hey there, buddy," Walter said softly, "what's your name?" "Noah," the boy mumbled, eyes locked on the floor. "Noah," Walter repeated with a smile. "That's a strong name. You know, I had a dog named Noah when I was a kid. Smartest dog I ever knew. He once opened the fridge and stole my birthday cake. That made Noah smile just a little, the corners of his mouth twitching before falling still again. Walter waited a moment, then asked, "Your chair giving you trouble?" Noah's lip trembled. He shook his head. "I'm okay." "Are you sure?" Walter asked gently. "Because sometimes, when I was little, I'd say, 'I'm okay,' when I really wasn't." Noah glanced up, his eyes wide and wet. "It hurts when I sit," he whispered. Walter's chest tightened. "Did you fall, son? Hurt your back?" Noah looked away. "He gets mad when I cry," he said, so quietly Walter had to lean in to hear it. "My mom's boyfriend, he hits me. With his belt. With other stuff, too." Walter's heart shattered. He reached out slowly, placing a hand gently on Noah's shoulder. "You're very brave for telling me that," he said, voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "That should never, ever happen to you." Walter immediately brought Noah to the school nurse, then to the principal, Mrs. Donnelly. A report was filed. The authorities were called. Child Protective Services came within hours. Noah was examined, and the bruises confirmed his story, old and new, some healing, others fresh. His mother, overwhelmed and manipulated by her abusive partner, had turned a blind eye. But now, the truth had a voice. The boyfriend was arrested, charged with multiple counts of child abuse. Noah was removed from the home that very night. But that wasn't the end. That's when the healing began. Noah was placed with the Hendersons, a kind middle-aged couple who had lost their own son in a car accident 2 years prior and had quietly hoped to adopt when the time felt right. The first time Noah met them, he barely spoke, but Mrs. Henderson knelt down and hugged him anyway, whispering, "We've been waiting for you, sweetheart," and something inside him began to soften. They gave him a warm bed, hot meals, a puppy named Bentley who licked away his tears, and a special cushion for his healing back. But more than that, they gave him something he'd never had before, safety. And through it all, Walter stayed in touch. He visited every Saturday with little gifts, homemade cookies, puzzles, toy soldiers, and stories from his childhood. He told Noah about the stars, about the swamp trails he used to hike, about the harmonica he played when his own father's rage made home too dangerous to stay in. "You remind me of me," he'd say, "but you're stronger, kid. Way stronger." And Noah began to bloom. Slowly. Steadily. By spring, he returned to Lincoln Elementary, this time with clean clothes, a confident smile, and a healed body. He walked into room 2B and sat, at his desk with ease. The other kids welcomed him back, and this time, he joined their games, shared his crayons, and even spoke during circle time. The teachers saw the transformation, and so did Walter. But the most powerful moment came at the school's spring assembly, where each student was asked to share something they were grateful for. Noah, nervous but determined, stepped onto the stage. The gym fell silent. He gripped the microphone with trembling hands and said, "I used to think grown-ups didn't care. But one did. Mr. W saw me when no one else did. He helped me. He didn't look away." The room erupted in applause, and Walter, sitting quietly in the back near the janitor's closet, wiped away tears with a calloused hand. That night, the school's website featured a photo of Noah and Walter, side by side, both smiling wide. The caption read, "Kindness doesn't wear a cape, it wears work boots." And the story spread, through the town, then the state, then across the country. News crews came, interviews were done, and Walter was celebrated as a hero. But he always shrugged it off. "I didn't do anything special," he'd say. "I just listened." Yet everyone knew, he had done everything. Because in a world that too often rushed past pain, that often mistook silence for peace, Walter had chosen to pause. To see. To ask. And in doing so, he saved a life. Noah thrived from that day forward. He joined the school choir. He won a reading contest. He made friends. He even started a kindness club with Mrs. Callahan, teaching kids how to recognize when someone might need help, how to be the one who notices. And Walter? He kept cleaning floors, fixing leaky pipes, and humming his jazz tunes. But now, every morning, he found a note waiting for him in his locker, written in bright colors, covered in stickers. "Thank you, Mr. W. You're my hero." Signed, Noah. And every day, Walter smiled, folded the note, and tucked it into a shoebox beneath his bed, the box where he kept the most important things he'd ever touched. Because sometimes, changing the world doesn't start with a grand gesture, it starts with a single child, a single chair, and someone who finally cared enough to ask why.